Welcome to the Science of Gratitude podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Mukanga, and each week we'll explore how gratitude transforms our lives through powerful stories and insights. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Science of Gratitude podcast again. Today, I have a great guest, and his name is Patrick Dekale Nawazkhan, and he's going to grace our podium today. He's going to be an inspiration to you and I say I as well, because I learn so much from our guests every single time we have a new guest on this platform. So, Mr. Patrick, please, would you please do us the favor of introducing yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. But first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor to be here. I had a great pleasure to listen to most of your episodes, and you do an absolutely amazing job just putting your guests at ease and the questions. And gratitude is something I think in today's society that sometimes get lost.
Yeah.
Taking the time to take a deep breath and just center and just see all the blessings that we have in front of us is much needed. So thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, my
Absolutely.
name is Patrick Dekale Nawazkhan. So firstborn, I have six siblings. So from a young age, I learned to be I learned to be very responsible. So what felt like when I was growing up, like, man, I can't mess up. I have to be the responsible one. Turned out to be a blessing
Mhm.
because I learned to be responsible from a young age. So I'm married, been married for about 16 years now to my
Yay.
beautiful wife Tanya.
Wonderful.
We have two children, a son who's 14, and our daughter is about to be 12 here next month.
Wow.
So that's a little bit about me. Born and raised in Kinshasa, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think I learned to grind, the grit, how to persevere, and all just the good things that I'm grateful for today. Learned from Kinshasa. So definitely grateful for that, and thanks again for having me here.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure having you. Thank you for saying yes. I feel privileged and also honored to have you on our platform. So it's a mutual appreciation, in fact. And
Thank
so
you.
for those, you're welcome. And for those who don't know what Kinshasa is, it is actually the capital city of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is where we both are originally from. And so, yes, that's what it is. Okay, so you got educated for a little minute. So, Patrick, would you please tell us, in your own term, how do you define gratitude?
So gratitude is being able to appreciate what we have
Mm.
as opposed to focusing on what we don't have.
Right.
And I think, especially in today's day and age, in the
Hmm.
society that we live in, it's very fast paced. We constantly see it's a consumer market, right? We constantly see commercials on TV, buy this new vehicle, have the biggest house. So, at times we get caught up about chasing quote unquote these dreams, and we
Yes.
forget sometimes what's really important and what matters, such as family,
Hmm.
memories,
Hmm.
experiences.
Hmm.
And to me, gratitude is something as simple as spending time with my wife, spending
Yes.
time with my children, just playing cards at the dinner table, and my daughter talking smack because she's kicking my butt. So that to me is just, very, very grateful for those moments.
Hmm.
And I learned that from a very young age because when we grew up, it's not like we had a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
but we spend a lot of time around the fire and my
Hmm.
mom making peanuts or roasting corn and
Right.
telling stories. And my grandma would tell stories about, how she grew up in a village. So I'm very grateful for those moments because that's what gave me a sense of purpose. That's what made me who I am today and understanding values that sometimes get missed and not necessarily passed down from one generation to the other. And I was able to receive both from grandma, from mom, all my uncles, so anybody in Africa when it's usually more than just the family members in the
Right.
household, right? So you always have folks there, which for us was a blessing. So that's to me in a long way my definition of being grateful.
I love it because you painted great pictures and actually you took me as well down memory lane because I remember being in the same city in Kinshasa as well. You know, when you go to school, you come back in the evening, it's a story time, you know, where you have your
Mm-hmm.
uncles, your aunties, like, you know, gathering and the same thing, you know, like boarding peanuts and same corn
Mm-hmm.
eating and talking about, you know, how it was when they were, in fact, in the village growing up and all of that. So you
Mm-hmm.
get to, you know, get your culture instilled, you know, while you're just having fun and eating and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you for taking me back. We tend
You're
to forget
welcome.
that a lot.
We tend to forget that, but guess what? That's kind of what we also do now, to our children. At least what I strive to do
Mhm.
is do those same memories, right? So when I'm grilling, I'm trying to roast corn. I'm
Mhm.
not doing peanuts.
Right.
That's a bit more challenging, but as I'm roasting corn, I try to tell those stories to my children
Yes.
and just pass down what I've learned and
Hmm.
insert those values in them. So it's really the simple life,
Yeah.
but that's what create a bond between parents and children and just reminiscing on family and
Mhm.
not losing sight of where we came from.
I love it. And one thing that I love as well about what you talked about gratitude and what to be grateful for, you spoke about memories. And I remember having a guest, her name is Angel, and she was saying how, you know, practicing gratitude can look like looking at pictures and just being grateful for all those great moments that, you know, have been a part of. So every month she actually goes into her phone and start looking and she's grateful. Oh, wow, this is what I did in January. Oh, wow, this is what I did on such and such a date. And so that you talked about memories, it took me back because I was like, I need to do that, especially because I love looking at pictures.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's an exercise that I do actually on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So I am also a business owner,
Hmm.
and sometimes the road can be challenging,
Oh, yes.
but the foundation is gratefulness. So I'm very blessed and fortunate to have great mentors
Mm-hmm.
that are kind of teaching me how to remain centered, looking at big picture and how to get there. So I always start my day with being grateful. So just jot down 10 things that I'm grateful for.
Hmm.
And it could be as simple as, hey, I'm healthy this morning. I woke up, I didn't need help.
Right.
Go outside and breathe air and just look at the sky and be like, man, God is absolutely amazing. And turn
Amazing.
around and yes, I have to get the kids ready for school and drop them. But it's a blessing to be able to do that, right? Because
Yeah.
some folks wish they had children. So sometimes it's just the little things that we
Hmm.
may take for granted. But
Hmm.
when you're grateful for that, I feel like it really lays the foundation for an amazing day. So
Yeah.
definitely, you know, I try to do that at least on the regular basis every day.
That is so amazing. Having a conversation before the conversation. So anyway, right now, I mean, this was great. We're gonna go ahead and dive into your gratitude story.
Sounds good. But that's what I love about your podcast is it's really fireside chat, right? So it's unscripted and we're just having a conversation and just
Right,
sharing our story. It's very
right.
authentic, right? So
Uh-huh.
there isn't any questionnaire or script of anything that I have to go through. We
Hmm.
are simply having a conversation. So my I guess gratefulness,
Hmm.
what I'm grateful for story is something that, like I mentioned, I was born in the Congo
Yes.
and growing up, it was very tough, right? It was very tough. Had to walk miles for school. Sometimes it gets hot, it gets rainy, but I always had those fond memories with
Hmm.
family.
Hmm.
And that's what we enjoyed, right? It wasn't the stuff that we had. It was, we didn't have, we had one TV with two channels, OZRT, right? And then one more with Congo Brazzaville. That's it. You get what you get, and you don't throw a fit, and you have to be on the schedule, otherwise you miss out all the cartoons. And you might be sitting there watching Booba, and if your uncle walks by, it's like, hey, turn the channel, I need to watch the news. Oh boy, that's it. You're done,
Are they good?
Bye.
It's 8 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock. Go to bed. As soon as the national anthem starts, you're in. Oh boy. go to bed. So, but I'm
By the
so
way, do you
grateful.
remember? You remember, like
Yeah.
when you talked about the rain, I remember, the smell of the rain, like trying to go to school and it would rain and smell so fresh.
Yes, man, it's one of those things, it's inexplicable, right?
Right.
So I still have those fond memories of when my grandma first moved in with us. I saw her walking around the outside. She's kind of looking at the yard. So I'm stepping outside. You can hear the bird chirping. You
Mm,
can feel the freshness in the air, and
man,
it's a little bit cold, but not too cold. And
yes.
when you just take a deep breath, the oxygen in your lungs. And I just remember walking. I'm like, "Hey, Grandma, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Well, I'm looking for a place to plant my seed." And then she had this little pouch in her liputa, and she just showed me. She's like, "This is the greatest goods you can ever have because if
Mm,
you learn to plant your seed,
mm,
you would never go hungry."
wow.
And I kept that with me. I was maybe 8 years old, but I kept that with me my entire life
Mm.
because she's right. If you plant your seeds and you learn to harvest, you would never go hungry.
I'm
Now,
writing
I
this
know
down.
yes. So, and I saw her how she started, and I love spending time with her. And we start laboring from picking up the stones, turning on the soil, and then planting. And she was very meticulous about how she did it. But just
Mhm,
to fast forward a few months later, man, we had bananas, we had all different types of vegetables. We
mhm,
had, speaking of peanuts, yeah, she
mm.
would make peanuts from scratch. And then I don't know if you remember bonbon. So it's like caramelized, so she will,
Yes.
like roast the peanuts and then caramelize the sugar, like sugar
Mhm.
cane, and made the bonbon. Man, you're talking about organic, and I'm just grateful for those moments
Yes.
because I still use it up to this day where, you know, even financially, it's about planting the seed, not just for yourself, but for the next generation as
Yes.
well. And yes, we're not planting actual seeds in the backyard.
Mhm.
But every word that we said, everything that we do is planting a seed, is having
Yeah.
an impact. It's not just our children, but
Mhm.
it's also the people around us at
Mhm.
work, businesses, anybody that we come in interaction with, or your waiter. It doesn't matter. Anybody. So are you planting a seed or taking
Mhm.
away a seed, right?
Mhm.
So that's really what I'm grateful for, those moments when I was a child.
Wow. That was a mouthful that your grandma said. I even wrote it down because I was thinking about all sorts of seeds. Yes. As you were saying, we may not be, planting seeds in the dirt, but we're definitely planting seeds. And that is what we're going to eat, whether good seeds or bad seeds. So you plant good seeds in people, you reap from them. And sometimes you may or may not reap from the person in whom you're actually planting the seed. Sometimes the harvest come from somewhere else. But
Mm.
also if you're planting something negative, that's also what you're going to reap. So
And that was some fire right there. Two things that I didn't think about, right? You're planting your seed, it might not come right away from that person, but it's still coming back to you. And a seed is a seed, so pick which one. So it can be a juicy fruit or vegetable, or
mhm.
it could be something with spine. So, but you're absolutely right. So well done there.
So paint a little more like your picture growing up and like how do you become who you are today?
So growing up, like I said, firstborn of seven, it was very chaotic.
Mm,
Getting ready in the morning, getting
mm,
the siblings, and now that I think about it, I'm like, I don't remember. Like we have breakfast real fast, we go to school, we didn't have lunch in schools or things of that nature. And sometimes you come back, food isn't ready, you have to wait because everything is made fresh every day.
mhm,
Not so much leftovers, just because, that's how we grew up, right? Everything is fresh. Even when you make fondue or any type of vegetable, you buy what you need, it's always there.
mhm.
So unless it's fish or chicken that you buy in a lot of quantity and
Yes.
freeze, but yeah. So I'm like, we never really put food like in front of everything. That was the last thing on our mind, at least for me growing up. So I was always very skinny, not wanting to eat all the time. I was always forced to eat something. And then I realized that I wasn't really excelling in primary school just
Mhm.
because it was too many, a lot of students. But at some point we changed school. I went to El Masombe. It was a smaller classroom setting. Teacher was spending a little bit more time. It was easier for me to understand. And I remember the first time I was really praying hard. I was like, man, I hope I get some good grades. I wasn't really understanding what's a good grade, what's a bad grade. But I remember being third of the class on the first semester when we moved to school. And I was absolutely like amazed. And I was like, man, this is so good. So I kept on praying and kept on studying. That's what really laid the foundation. Then later I met a gentleman called Patrick Mukulumania,
Mhm.
and he loved math. I mean, math and physics. He was just so passionate about it that
Mhm.
he started rubbing off on me.
Mhm.
And during summer vacation, I remember I would purposely find a physics books where, you can do experiment, do the batteries and create your own stuff. So like what we call here science.
Mhm.
So I fell in love with math and physics growing up. So it was really what we come from Muchik. I just love studying. I love learning. I wasn't too much into going out and hanging out with friends, and I didn't need to because in our yard we had a mango tree that was
Mhm.
different than in the neighborhood. So you got two type of mangoes, right? One that's pretty big and very meaty, and then you
Yeah.
have the smaller one that's kind of juicy.
Wonder about Congo.
Yeah, so exactly. And that's what we had. So because it
Yes.
was so juicy, all the kids in the neighborhood would come. I mean, it was so many mangoes, it would go to waste. So all the guys would come in and would just sit down by the patio and they would eat mangoes. And,
Mhm.
and I ate so much mango, I cannot eat another mango up to this day. And
Really?
grandma would make, oh my God, I ate way too many mangoes. She would make a mango sauce, mango juice, and then you eat mango as a fruit. I mean, man, I had way too many mangoes. I cannot have another mango. Like I now look at mango from a distance.
Mangoes are like one of my favorite fruits, actually.
It was too, but I abused them. So this time I'm like, no, I cannot have another mango. But I do like mango habanero wings. That I can tell you I do enjoy. So I started enjoying learning, and it became a
Mhm.
challenge for me to be top of the class, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes I'll be first, sometimes second, sometimes, but always within the top five in the vicinities. And I had great friends where we enjoy. I think it was just a different generation, right? So we took a lot of pride into getting a good grade,
Mhm.
and we didn't have a lot of distractions. It was a lot of one-on-one time, but it's not until my junior year in high school that I discovered music. At first, I
Okay.
wasn't really paying attention. So that's when I started liking music. I started listening to, back in the day, Phil Collins or Michael Bolton. And then I got into R&B, started listening to Joe Dacey, all that stuff. So slowly but surely, I started getting into music. And then after that, Kofi and Papa Wemba, all of that, I started getting into a little bit of music. So I wouldn't say that I listen to music all the time,
Mhm.
but it's not what I'm looking to do all the time. But I
Mhm.
do enjoy a good music,
Mhm.
time to time. And I'm kind of stuck in the 90s. I still go back to those old records. Yeah. So yeah, so that's a little bit about me growing up in Kinshasa, and then from there I came here in the United States,
Mhm.
and I went to school for aviation. So I wanted to be a pilot. Unfortunately, when I got my licenses, it was around 9/11. They changed a lot of
Oh,
different rules, a lot of, yeah. So the industry almost bankrupt. So I had
wow.
to readjust. I had to readjust, and what else can I do if I'm not going to be a pilot here? What else can I do? And while I was in school, I was fortunate enough to work for a company where there was a ton of growth. It was countrywide at the time. You may not remember, but they kind of did mortgage services, things of that nature. They offer a lot of different opportunities to grow, and before you know it, I took a different
Mhm.
career path and
Mhm.
grew within the company as a manager, and I was there for a long time, and then I kept on going. So a little bit about kind of my youth and how I got to where I am today.
How old were you when you got here? And then did you come by yourself? How did you adjust? Because, our language is French. And so how was
Yes.
that, adjustment coming
Yeah.
in?
It was tough. Not only it's a different language, but
Mm.
also, you are homesick. And then I came by myself. So it was rough, right? It was very difficult time, but just being here by myself and try to discover, okay, what is the system? And then even studying was a bit challenging because, I
Mhm.
didn't speak English, but I started to adapt and I was like, okay, I don't want to be listening to French all the time, which we
Right.
couldn't. It's not like we didn't have YouTube to be out there
Mhm.
watching French videos all the time or movies or anything like that. So I really just dive right into English. Anything that I was doing, I tried to do it in English, and slowly but surely I started learning. So I was very homesick, I would say, for the first 3 years,
Yeah.
especially that I wanted to be a pilot, and I quickly realized that those dreams wouldn't happen. And I
Mhm.
remember, my first job was at Walmart. So I got there and just kind of, grinding, and I was putting stuff on the shelf
Mhm.
one night, and I'm like, man, did I really come in this country to do this? There
Mhm.
has to be more. And fortunately, a friend of mine was working for, say, an IT was a technology company, and they did
Mhm.
payment processing.
Mhm.
And he was moving over to Canada. And it's like his name is JT. So it's like, hey Patrick, why don't you just come on and just take my place? And I will show you, train you, and I had to work on different equipment.
Mhm.
And because I had done such a great job at Walmart, believe it or not, I was getting paid more than I would have going to this processing center.
Mhm.
But I was looking at it like, okay, it's a different environment. At least that gave me through what you want to say corporate, and I
Mhm.
can learn something different. And it wasn't as physically demanding. So I will work there overnight, and
Yes.
then I will go to school during the day. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I went from, a working in a store, working
Yes.
overnight, and then when
Mhm.
he left, just something that I had from my dad is work ethic. So it's like whatever you do, either it's putting stuff on the shelf, and that's why I was able to get so many different raises while I was
Right.
at Walmart because of my work ethic. And even there, I became one of the best technicians. Okay, I'm trying to be humble, but I was the best technician. I
Mhm.
was producing the most, I was producing the most volume in the shorter amount of time,
Uh-huh.
and that's how promotion to become a team lead. Now, the story behind that is the first time the manager approached me to be a team lead, I turned her down
Okay.
because she wanted me to lead. I looked across the room. I was working on the machine, which is fine, but
Mhm.
then team lead was in a data entry center. I'm looking across the room because it was two separate rooms. Man, there was like 35 people out there.
Mhm.
All of them had been there for years. I'm looking at myself like, bro, I'm 20 years old. I barely speak English. How am I going to lead these people?
Lead.
And I was terrified to place a service call. If something goes wrong, I'm like, how am I going to explain what's wrong? I can't even say a few words here. I was terrified. I was like, no, it's okay. I'll pass. I'm good at this. I just stay here. I'm going to school anyway, so it doesn't
Mhm.
matter.
Mhm.
But well, maybe a couple of weeks, less than a couple of weeks after I said no, I was
Mhm.
driving back and I think God just slapped the back of my head. And then I woke up, I'm like, for real, I was like, okay, if I have to readjust because I'm not able to get a job as a pilot, there's an
Mhm.
opportunity in front of me. I'm
Right.
saying no. How am I
Uh-huh.
gonna ever progress or get somewhere?
Mhm.
Drove home and I was working the night shift again. I was like, man, tomorrow, as soon as I see her, I'm going to tell her I take the job,
Yes.
and which I did. So I told her I would take the job, and I got the job. And before you know it, I learned, just fake it until you make it, I guess. But I started really grinding and learning, and I became very fast at data entry. And I understood because I worked all the equipment, it
Mhm.
actually worked in my favor because every time there was an error or
Mhm.
a batch that did not balance properly, I knew exactly where to find the error and correct it because I
Okay.
worked on those equipment. And that's how my mindset shifted,
Mhm.
that if I put my mind into it, I can accomplish anything.
Mhm.
But I understood the power of self-improvement, like
Mhm.
constantly learning, just do better. And it doesn't matter if you get a credit or not. It doesn't matter if you get a fancy diploma or not. What's important is how better you become every day. Just be better. And
Mhm.
that's really how I learned the power of, like I said, self-improvement.
Right.
And from that point on, I just kept grinding and kept progressing to the point I am today.
What did you do with the fact that you didn't speak English very? How did you actually end up leading the people without the English proficiency?
So luckily for me, it was really learning on the fly.
Uh,
Try to say those words, and I will actually practice my speech before I meet with the team.
mm,
So I started listening to this gentleman named Brian Tracy,
mm,
and he had a lot of different tips on how to present yourself in a meeting. It was all about preparation. So I was over preparing just
yes.
because I didn't want to embarrass myself. I was the youngest person out there, and I wanted to prove that I belonged there, and there is a reason why I got the job. So very quickly, I got the buy-in of the team, and but I was really over preparing, making
Mm,
sure that I was on point, always on
mm,
time. I had my set up my goals and what I wanted to talk about, so I will prepare my
mhm,
speech ahead of time and what I will say, how I will say it. And so that, when I'm in front of them, I'm prepared because I remember the first time was not really good. And I had a very French accent. Now I think sometimes I will say something and then I will catch myself, huh? What did I just say? Even myself couldn't understand me. So, that was, it was very French. My accent was very pronunciated and very difficult to understand. But
mm,
that's really how I used to speak. So I had to change and make sure it doesn't matter if you have an accent or not. You
right.
can still make sure that the person listening is able
Yes.
to understand what you're saying. So it was just preparation, practice, and making sure that I continuously learn. And I did a
Mhm,
lot of self-learning. That's why I say I understood the power of personal development and self-improvement from that point
yes.
on by
Yeah.
listening to a lot of well, we had CDs at the time. So I will pop a CD while I'm driving or at
Mm.
home, take my notes, how to be organized. So that's really how I was able to overcome the language barrier.
That's amazing because honestly, yeah, no, I can't tell that you had a very French accent. First of all, but Brian Tracy is the man. Okay, like
Yes.
hands down. So yes, we learn a lot, even like on leadership with him and all that
Mhm.
good stuff. I really like the fact that you talked about the power of self improvement. That's really, really important. And how you talked about the fact that you were over preparing. It's always best to be over prepared than to be under prepared. Yeah, I mean, I really love that. I keep writing stuff down.
Well, here's one more for you. I believe, hopefully I'm not going to butcher his quote, but Martin Luther King used to say that, people in America die at 25. We just don't bury them until they're, 80 or older.
My God.
Because what's after college, right? A lot of the vast majority of people, I was looking at a service like 47% of people don't read books anymore.
Mhm.
Something ridiculous like that, right? So once you graduate from college or finish high school, most people don't open another book, right? So you just started working and you get in this circle and you don't grow. The root of happiness is really your own personal growth. The more
Yeah.
you grow, the happier you are. But that's something sometimes I get lost. And the only way I got to learn this is by doing self-improvement for myself and just wanting to be better. And I started learning all these things. And I was like, man, this is so deep. And like I mentioned, I've got such great mentors, Kashaya Rastan being one of them.
Hmm.
He kind of co-produced a movie, Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
So listen to him a lot. Ed Milet is another person. So a lot of things that I will talk about, I did not invent. I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I listen to Ed Milet's podcast every day. So that's really my juice. And, before I get my day started, as I'm getting ready to take my shower, get ready, I just blast the podcast and just listen to positivity. I learned a ton of tips on how to start my day. He was talking about how to have 3 days worth of productivity into one. I had
Okay.
to pause. I'm like, what is he talking about?
Right.
So, and once I started listening to it, I was like, man, this makes so much sense. And I
Mhm.
started implementing those tips into my daily routine. And I find myself being more productive and have more of a purpose. Okay. So, anyway, his podcast is free. It's on YouTube. Anyone can go out there and listen to it. But yeah, so that's really how you grow by just continuously learning. and just be 1% better every day.
1% better every day. Wow. And what I was going to say about the beauty of the US is that, unlike a country such as France or Belgium, not trying to put them down, in the US, even when you have an accent or, you're struggling, people are still not truly making fun of you because, accent is not up to par for the most part. Now, if you go into some areas with people who are not as well educated, of course, they're going to make fun of you. They might call you African booty scratcher, as they would my brothers when they first came in here. I was fortunate to come when I was just about to start college, so I missed all that nonsense, thank God. But like, by far, people are trying to understand what you're saying. Even though, when you get, some people, on the call, when you're trying to call like some technical support, they'll be, I don't understand what you're saying. But with regular people, usually they're really trying to understand. And the fact that you are trying to speak their language, already gives you like one foot in the door. And so that's why, even for people that I would give advice, like a young person who would come in this country, I would say, um, even as Christian, I always say, put yourself in an environment where English is mostly spoken. And I thank God, because when my parents sent me here, they sent me in a city where I was by myself. I had a lot of family members in Charlotte, North Carolina, but my parents sent me in South Carolina, Columbia, for me to learn English so that I would dive in and not be surrounded by people who spoke French all the time. And that's
Wow.
how I was able to speak English faster. Because here, in the US, once you master the language, God is your limit, if you will. I won't even say the sky, because mastering the language, you can now, do whatever pretty much you want. The doors are open. There's very small areas or field in which, or you may not be able to actually have access to. And people don't tend to typically make fun of you because, they don't understand. They try to really understand you. So for someone who has those kind of limitations, as we did, um, there's hope for you. Just try to really learn, master the language, and you can really soar in the US.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And kind of going back to if I can react to your comments there, number one, I think we grew up in a rich culture
Hmm.
where you can be on the bus and there are 10 different languages being spoken,
Oh
and you
yes.
don't understand a word of what anybody's saying. Nobody
Hmm.
understands each other, and it's perfectly okay
Hmm.
because of the richness of the culture, right? So we grew up with multitude, even or just dialect and so forth. So it was perfectly okay. But where, here, it's not as diverse from a language perspective
Right.
when it comes to the workforce. So, you find yourself there. And for the people that you refer to, of course, I didn't grow up in Belgium or France or things of that nature. But, even here, I find the people who have been traveling and kind of discover outside of the United States are a little bit more fascinated about different cultures, you
Yes.
know, and even sometimes those who have not traveled can be fascinated, right? It just depends on the person's upbringing and how
Yes.
they see different things. So I experience both. And, to your point, I think it just depends on the effort that you make and how you present yourself and your own habits. Because if you come across as willing to be learning and curious, I think folks are more receptive. As if
Yes.
you're coming, being rude and
Yes.
like everybody's frustrated. If you don't understand the language, now you can't speak it and you're frustrated. Just imagine what the other person is feeling because they can't
Right.
understand what you're saying either, right? So the
Exactly.
frustration is there, but we still want to be courteous and so forth. Now there are differences in cultures and so forth that can make a difference. But I agree with you. Come in, make your best effort to learn the
Hmm.
language, especially for us. Now, for other cultures, though, it might not be as prominent because they have a system. So if you look at the Chinese or Indians or sometimes even the Hispanic population, at
Hmm.
times they haven't learned English. Not all, I'm not generalizing everything,
Right.
but you can still see a lot of folks from those different cultures that have been established and they have a system, a support system in place
Yes.
who are able to come in and strive
Mm,
without even learning English, right?
mm,
So we don't have that support system as Congolese, right? Which is the work that you're doing here, and the hope that the work that I'm trying to do as well is try to create a system for our community to be able to be supportive, have that so that when someone comes in, yes, it's still important to learn the language because
mhm.
we live in the United States
Right,
and we have to be able to adapt. It just opens more doors, like you said,
right. It gives you an
but
edge.
exactly, but we have to be able to also establish a community, a strong community, so that when someone comes in, either they learn the language or not, they can still evolve. Why am I saying this? Is because we always think about ourselves. We came in young, we had a chance to learn in the workforce. But if you think about someone who might be a little bit older, it
Yes.
might be a little bit more challenging for them to
Mhm.
start learning the language. And they might be the smartest person on earth. They
That
just
part.
don't have the avenue to be able to learn the language as easy as we did because we're just thrown in the wolves. Just be out there, learn. But for
Mhm.
someone else, it doesn't mean that they're not smart. Like I said, they might be very, very smart, but just the system where it is makes it difficult for them to learn the language. And then before you know it, they end up having a job, lesser job that they deserve just because of the language barrier, right? So yes, there is hope. Learn the language, make sure that you make that effort because it will open more doors for you. But
Mhm.
as a community, let's support each other as well so that even if someone is not speaking the language, we can still help them thrive.
Right. I agree with you. I agree with you. We need to be, united and help each other and help. And obviously, as you said, when we came, we didn't have those kind of responsibilities. So somebody who comes in with a lot more, responsibilities, it can be tough. However, I did see some graduations where you see like a 70-year-old lady graduating or things like that. So
Hmm.
what we don't want to do is we do not want to put any barriers, whether it being because
Exactly.
of the age, because of the family size, or whichever. Because I remember that when my father, for instance, and even my mother, they had us going to school. My dad was
Hmm.
doing his PhD, and we were there, so they had to go study, prepare for their, all of that, and still come home and take care of young kids while my
Hmm.
mom was also doing nursing school. So if you tell yourself that, if you put that limitation on yourself, then you won't go far. But if you remove that, you can still always like find ways to do things,
I agree.
and to
100%.
start. So let's trying to not, because if you really put like a solid barrier and say, I can't, that's exactly where you're going to stop. But if you tell yourself, let me see, or how can I make this happen? You can find a way. It may not be, super easy, but it can
I
be
agree
done.
with you 100%. And that's why I say it may be a little bit more difficult. I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
say you can't accomplish it,
Yes, it'll definitely be more challenging for sure.
but it's all about the belief that you have in yourself
Exactly.
and not pulling those limits. So going back again to self-improvement and how important that is,
Yes.
because a lot of the belief that we have
Mhm.
is based on our prior experiences, right? We
Yes.
were told no, or you try to speak in public, somebody laugh, and then all of a sudden you don't want to do that anymore. So we create these beliefs that we think is the truth about us,
Mhm.
but it's not because I can strongly believe about something and you believe something completely
Different.
opposite. And
Right.
we are both right,
Hmm.
you know? So that's where we have to differentiate the difference between the truth and a belief because a belief can be changed. And
Yes.
to exactly what you said, we don't want to put limit in ourselves
Mhm.
and continuously evolve. I believe that we can do something no matter what it is.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I want to ask you, and I do know that there is something that you're working on. I just want you to briefly talk to us about, and I will say, I know that you are someone who teaches people financial literacy. So how did that start, like for you, that spark to educate people on financing? Where did that come from? And how do you, in a few minutes, how do you do that?
Thank you for the question. So growing up again in Kinshasa, I've seen how not having something can be difficult, right?
Yes.
So when I started working here in the United States, very quickly realized that, oh my goodness, we have to pay a lot of bills. And I remember when I was younger, I had my first car. It was in 1997. That was not my first car, but my first nice car, I would say. 1997 Mercury Sabre,
Hmm.
and paid off and everything. It was roomy, fuel efficient. I loved it. But being around friends and they're like, oh man, they talk about Cadillacs and how those are nice. And I was like, "Oh, actually, they don't cost as much. I'd like to have a Cadillac." So my city behind went ahead and traded my car for a Cadillac. And that was the worst decision I've ever made. That
Wow.
car only put premium, and then it was drinking twice as much gasoline. And then I couldn't go to Walmart do a 1888 oil change. I had to go to the mechanic for a
Wow.
so anyway, my expenses just skyrocketed for the
This.
vehicle. And I was like, it's not even that nice. And I was like, I regret it instantly, instantly.
Wow.
And I was miserable driving that vehicle because it's just a vehicle, right?
Hmm.
And I understood how hard it is to earn every single dollar because I was working so hard. And I felt like, man, all my money is going into the vehicle now. I don't have the extra money that I used to have. And God heard my prayer because someone hit my car. Thank goodness I wasn't in it. It was just parked. I'm telling you, I don't know how that person came and just hit a parked vehicle, but the car got totaled. Used the money. I was like, thank you, Lord. You heard my prayer. I went
Talk
ahead
about
and,
gratitude.
man, talk about gratitude. I was like, I am never doing that mistake again. So
Yes.
it was a blessing in disguise because I
Yes.
went ahead and bought a Chevrolet right
Hmm.
away. I was like, I'm not messing around with luxury things that you don't need. And I
Hmm.
became a little bit more a steward of my money, but I wasn't there yet. It's not until I met my wife and I proposed to her that it really shook me. I realized, my goodness, I'm about to take this woman in my house, and I'm very old school where the man has to take care of your wife, and like she's free to do whatever she wants.
She wants.
But that's the beauty, right? Because she can choose whatever.
Hmm.
But I have to take care of everything so that
Yeah.
she doesn't have to, like, I need to work or I need this job.
Hmm.
She's a successful business owner
Hmm.
and she does it because she wants to, because she
Right.
also has ambitions, but she never has the pressure of paying the bills. So way back when I start feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to take care of this woman. I need to make changes. So I sat down and start looking at, I'm like, why do I have two cars? I had a sports car and I was like, so I was like, no, I need to get rid of one. And I was like, why
Wow.
am I paying this, why am I paying this cell phone? It was like $150. I was like, man, I can get Metro PCS for a quarter of that price. So I
Mm-hmm.
started looking at all my expenses and everything
Hmm.
that I was kind of, quote unquote wasting money on. And I
Yes.
was able to just save $1,000 by just eliminating some of those bills.
Wow.
So that's when I really took responsibility of my action. And I wish I had done that sooner.
Hmm.
So my wife is the same way. She's very, she doesn't spend a lot. Believe it
Hmm.
or not, I have more shoes than she does. So she's very, like, sometimes like, I see her shoe, I'm like, baby, it's beautiful. Come on, grab some. And she's like, no, I don't need it. I'm like, it's not about need. It will look nice on you. I want you to take it. Take some. I had to force to buy shoes for her and other stuff. But we became very, very kind of good savers.
Hmm.
But I got to the point where after many, many years, I'm like, man, it's my saving is growing and I feel like
Yes.
we're financially stable, but it's not where I wanted it to be. And 2 years ago, I met a friend of mine and he taught me the new art of living, which is a
Okay.
different philosophy on learn how money works and how to make more money and talk about self-improvement. So when I learned the new art of living, I realized, man, there's so much more I could have done.
Yes.
And so I started looking at everything that I have. And now I feel really, really good because I'm able to maximize my savings and let my savings work for me. I
Hmm.
used to work for my saving, but now my savings are working for me, which is a big
Love
difference.
it.
And I continuously add to it. But what I love about it even more is that it's multiplying and there's more power to it. There's a big difference between multiplying and adding, right? So when it comes to your investment. So once I started learning, I was like, man, this is so good. I wish I had known this when I had my first job that immediately I was like, I need to share this with everybody that I know. I was like, I don't care if you don't have any money, if you do have money, my nephew, my nieces, cousins, everybody that I knew, I just started sharing with them because, hey, if you're going to do something with it or not, I don't care. I just need you to know. And at some point, I'm like, okay, I also have a community around here that needs to know this stuff, which is
Right.
why I joined, Community Dream Makers Act
Mhm.
so that I can also share. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm just sharing my experience and
Right.
talking about talking to people on how they can also maximize their savings. Sharing is caring, and
Yes.
that's really why I'm on a mission now to just educate people and whatever the community needs, really make myself available, at least once a month to just talk about different subjects and then talk about my experience. Now, there are so much content out there, some
Yes.
good, some
So,
bad. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know everything because I don't,
mhm.
but it's really the basics, right? Just when you invest, make sure that you understand your return. That's bare bone minimum. Just
Mhm.
understand how your accumulation phase is impacted because that's important. There is a difference, like I said, between accumulation, addition, and multiplication. So
Mhm.
understand that. Number two is understand your risk. It doesn't matter where you invest in the stock market or real estate, or if you want a safe approach with, a CD, doesn't matter. Just understand the risk. Okay. And then lastly, how are your taxes impacted?
Mhm.
Okay. So just understand how you pay your taxes. It could be taxed now, it could be deferred, or how about not paying your taxes at all, right? So it doesn't matter what you do, just understand those three components of investing and that's it. You'll be good, right? So whatever you decide to do for yourself that's best for your own situation, you can make an educated decision because I didn't know this concept and I was making decisions that were not necessarily the best.
Right. Oh my goodness. I love it. And thank you that, you decided to learn for yourself, but not keep it to yourself, but actually make yourself available to whoever has ear to hear what you have to say. So that being said, like, if somebody wanted to contact you or get in touch with you to learn more about how to be financially healthier, how could they do that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way is to contact me via phone. I would say text and then, send me your name and we'll find some time to chit chat. So once I have your name and email, I can send you my availability and then set up a call for a chit chat. Now, I'm not one of those that will sit here and say, hey, I have something to sell or do sales. Not at all. I just, it's not what I do. All right. It's
Mhm.
simply having a conversation and providing that education. And my phone number is 214-900-3234. So 214-900-3234. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me
Mhm.
and, set up a call and then we'll just have a chit chat. So no pressure to do anything. Like I said, and, it's like I said, simply understanding if you want to invest, how to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so, so very much. This was great.
It
This
was
was such a
amazing.
great
It was
conversation.
amazing.
Yes, you took me down memory lane and then we traveled through, came to the US, talked about self-improvement. Before that, we talked about seeds. We talked about so many great things. What really, really stood out to me are those two things. The seeds, that well said advice from your grandmother. You always have to sow something. If you want to, if you plant a seed, you will never go hungry. And so talked about, being mindful of the type of seeds that you actually are planting. And then we
Mhm.
talked about the power of self improvement. And I love how you talked about the fact that self improvement has many faces. It could be for somebody who, yes, is highly educated or going at it through education, or, there's so many venues where you can actually improve yourself on your own. And thank you for sharing the great podcast with Ed Mallet. I'm going to look into it. And so we're going to put all those information available in the description of this episode. And so I really, again, want to thank you so much for saying yes to the invitation. And really, we looking forward to continue this conversation. To anyone who has any question, as you said, he's not trying to sell you anything. He wants to just chit chat. So don't hesitate to contact him.
Man, this was amazing. Thank you so much. Very honored to be here, Dr. Valerie. You are doing amazing work at your clinic and
Thank
putting
you.
literally smile on people's face and brighten their days. So we are very proud of you as a community. You continue to inspire so many of us, including young ladies who aspire to do something with their lives. My daughter included. She wants to be a dentist
Oh,
when she grow
yeah.
up. I would
Wonderful.
love to bring her one day and see your clinic and say, see, you can do that as well.
I would be
And
honored.
thank you so much for just being an inspiration to the community and having me here for this chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, if you have made it to this point and you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please don't hesitate to do so. You'll find value in it because this episode was like really good. So are so many others that we had proposed to you in the past and will continue to do so. Please like and comment and definitely share to someone who can definitely benefit from this episode as well. And that being said, we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Science of Gratitude podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, share it, and leave us a review. Your support helps us keep spreading the power of gratitude. And until next time, stay grateful. God bless you.